Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Odejima. Welcome to the presentation, Doing Business in Japan, the Do's and Don'ts. This presentation is brought to you by the Trade Commissioner Service, Embassy of Canada to Japan. The presentation will cover key features about the Japanese business culture and give you some tips when you have to deal with Japanese corporates. Hope this will help you be prepared to come to this Japanese market. Before going to the details, let me give you a brief introduction of myself. My name is Taisuke Alex Odejima. I'm French and Japan mixed. I'm a CEO of a company named Edge of Innovation. I'm helping foreign startups find their way to the Japanese market. I've been helping a lot of startups and big corporates creating new business divisions. I'm working with about 20 different countries' embassies to help their innovative initiatives. I'm also mentor to the Canadian Technology Accelerator program run by the Trade Commissioner in Japan. So let me talk first about the business context and the cultural background of Japan. Japan is currently under the huge shift of business scene. First of all, we have a huge labor and talent shortage. It's a decreasing population, and there is an estimation of about 300,000 engineers that we are looking for, and this lack of this shortage of labor could go up to 800,000 engineers in the next 10 years. It means that any AI or robotics technology could be a big plus because it's going to allow companies to continue their service even if they don't have enough employees. There's a huge need for digitalization. When you will start dealing with Japanese companies, you will very quickly realize that it's a very analog country. For example, you will have to sign contracts on paper. The government has created an agency of digital last year, which is aiming to accelerate the digitalization of the country. But combined with the shortage of engineers, the lack of experience, this digitalization trend could be a big plus for foreign startups. There is also a huge rise of open innovation. A lot of companies are now ready to collaborate with startups, including foreign ones. There's also a huge growth of CVCs, corporate VC. We now have about 400 and more CVCs. So any large corporations that you may have heard of it, like Sony, they all have a CVC and are looking for startups in which they could invest into. And this is also because there's a big surplus of internal cash. And the cash that they have in the bank account is about 4.2 trillion US dollars. And it's money that they have to invest into something, but because of different reasons, they are looking for startups or any kind of opportunities where they could put this money to. And the government is also pushing the company by creating tax exemption programs. So now it's really like a great opportunity for foreign startups come Japan to find a partner to work with. On the other hand, there's some cultural differences that you may have to face when you're doing business here. Japanese companies are intolerant of mistakes, which means that employees who try to do something new, if they fail, it's going to become very difficult for them to go higher in the company, which means that most of them would try to minimize the risk and avoid doing anything risky or any challenges. That's something you will see a lot. So when you are trying to make them make decisions, then this fear of responsibility comes, where they will try to create some kind of mutual understanding in the company to make sure that there isn't one person who will be pointed out. So this is the reason why it's going to take a lot of time. This is the reason you will feel like you never meet the person who make the final decision. This is the reason why they will ask you a lot of information to verify your product works, and really, it's something that is core in the Japanese people's mindsets. That's very important to remember. And because of that, they don't like to change anything, which means that if you want to replace something that the company is already using, then you have to make sure that it absolutely will work better than the current one. And there is one tip is that instead of asking them to switch something that they already have, present your product as something which is going to add value to the existing one. Because changing is taking responsibility, and taking responsibility means that they absolutely have to make sure that there isn't any mistakes. This is how the mindset of most Japanese employees have. Keep in mind those 3 points. It will facilitate you to understand their behavior and having better communication with them. With that said, Japan is a very hard market to get into for sure, but because they don't like to change anything, once you have a contract, it's much easier to maintain than the other countries. So the only thing you need is to be well prepared. And this is what this presentation is all about. Now let me explain the do's and don'ts. First, do focus on the track record, which means that you have to talk about facts in your presentation document. Don't try to put too much plans or a feature that is supposed to come in 6 months. You have to put facts, something which is already done. And mention your previous work experience in Japan if you have. That's gonna be very, very helpful because it will let them feel safe that you are a company who already know how to deal with Japanese companies. And that's a kind of sign that shows that it won't be any mistakes. And the list of your actual customers doesn't necessarily need to be Japanese ones. Famous ones will help you a lot to convince them that your service, your product works well. Just think that this list is there to really like a sign of endorsement for your product. And if you have a Japanese company's famous one, then that's going to be a very big plus. Don't count on their ideas for use cases. I think that most of the time you go to meet large corporations, explain about your technology, and you expect them to come up with ideas on how to use the technology for their company. In Japan, it doesn't work that way most of the time. You have to be the one suggesting concrete use cases. You have to come with ideas, knowing what the company is dealing with. Try to elaborate some ideas on how to use your technology to fit their use cases. Of course, you will have clue during the meetings on how they want to use it, but try to come up with first ideas so that you can start the conversation. If you have examples with existing clients, that's great because it's going to help them have other ideas, but also it's some addition to the first do's. It's going to let them feel confident that your service is already used by other people, and which means that it works well. And this conversation on coming up with concrete use cases, it's going to help them qualify what they need. Actually, a lot of time, Japanese companies know their issues, but they are not exactly sure about the kind of technology which is supposed to solve their problems. So by using those use cases through the discussion, the core target is to help them clarify what they need and try to make them feel that your technology is the solution for the problem they have. Next, do constant follow-ups. It's very important to remember that you are the one who will have to lead the conversation. So each time you have an appointment, you have a meeting with the Japanese companies, make sure to send a recap and the thank you email. The email should cover what you have discussed. Will be great to add some next things to do, some to-dos in the emails that's going to allow to continue the conversation. And being the one sending that kind of recap email and being the one to do the follow-ups, it's going to show that you are motivated. In the Japanese culture, It's the one who is looking for a service who should be the proactive one. So by being the person who is doing the follow-ups, it's gonna show that you really are looking for it. You are really interested. You are motivated about working with this company. And also, as any kind of relationship, you will know that at one point you will have to let go if you don't get any replies. So after 2, 3 follow-up emails and it doesn't send you any reply, it probably means that they are not interested with you. And the Japanese companies tend to not answer. Instead of saying no, no thanks, they will ignore your email. So if you don't have replies, it's kind of sign that they don't want to continue the business with you. So in that case, just let go. But you can send some updates about the progress of your services, or you have new features in your product. It might open new doors. Next point, don't push them to make quick decisions. As I explained in the cultural background, in Japanese companies, people tend to try to not become the only responsible person, which means that when they will have to make decisions, they will try to make this a mutual decisions, try to involve other people in the company to make sure that there isn't only one person who will be blamed. And this is the core reason why it takes a lot of time. And also because it's not a digitized country, they used to have a lot of meetings face to face to decide anything. The discussion to make a decision was not over email or Slack, but at meetings. So you have to wait that kind of meetings is organized. This is the reason why you will have to expect about a week or two to get some answers. So if the company doesn't answer you, doesn't give you an answer for 2 weeks, it's nothing exceptional. I say that you have to do the follow-ups, but have to be sure that you are not pressuring them too much. Like sending a follow-up because you don't get answer, try to communicate with them every day. It's gonna make them feel uncomfortable. And if you go too far, you may lose them. They might think, okay, this company is difficult to deal with, or they are looking too much for quick answers, then we are not a good fit. And they will decide to stop dealing with you. So be careful, do the follow-ups, but make sure that you don't pressure them too much. When you have established a regular contact, though, it's good to set some timelines when you do these meetings. For example, you probably will start by signing an NDA and say, okay, let's have this NDA signed before end of the month. And once the NDA signed, is like, okay, let's try to create a plan, a detailed plan for the prototyping project within 3 weeks. So that kind of feasible timelines will help have a smooth communication with them. Be careful, it has to be a feasible timelines, don't put too much pressure on it. It's extremely important to build a personal relationship with the contact point that you have. Really put in your mind that the first thing to do is to gain this trust as a person before negotiating price and terms. It's not a company to company negotiation. It's more like a person to person relationship. And that's extremely important, especially because most of Japanese employees will stay in the same company for 10, 20 years. Most of the time, they never change job, which means that once you have this trust, once you have this strong relationship, when you release a new product or when you do a huge pivot and you start doing something completely different, you still be considered as the same person that they are trusting. So the communication will be much smoother. So if you had only a relationship of a contract as a product then of course, if you change the product, you will have to restart the whole conversation. But because they trust you, then it's gonna make you much easier to sell new things. And of course, most of those people will be promoted and have a stronger decision power. So having a good relationship with the contact person that you got is very, very important. And it's changing a bit after the COVID, but still they like to have face-to-face meetings, or at least they will prefer to have a Zoom call instead of exchanging ideas over emails or Slack. And before COVID, any startup wishing to sell something to a corporate had to go to the office. Doing phone calls or do some presentation online was considered as impolite. So for sure, the COVID has changed this mindset, but still it's only a year. So Lily, this is deep into the Japanese culture. So if they ask you to have a face-to-face meetings or a Zoom conference call nowadays, it's something which is very important in their culture. So be aware of that. And after COVID, if you can come to Japan, if they ever invite you to go drink after a meeting, that's a very, very good sign. In the Japanese culture, having dinner together, get some drink, it's a sign that they are starting to trust you. So that's very important to build a relationship. On the other hand, avoid to invite from your side, because it's very difficult for them to refuse if they have other obligations or anything. So just keep in mind that if they invited you, try to get this as a big opportunity. Don't take everything at face value. Japanese culture doesn't say things that they really think. And you will very often need to read between the lines. But of course, if you don't have this Japanese cultural background, it's very difficult to guess what they really mean. So the thing to remember is that, especially when they say bad thing about bad comments, you have to take them seriously. And more importantly, seek advice from a mentor, a Japanese staff if you have in your company, and your Canadian Trade Commissioner in Japan will, of course, be able to help you this communication, which is quite difficult if you don't understand the core of the Japanese culture and not able to lead between the lines. Find partner in Japan. Because of all the reasons I've mentioned before, it's very helpful to have someone in Japan who can help you with the communication, which is very unique in this culture. So it has to be someone who not only speaks the language, but knows the culture, knows the business culture. Someone who can speak Japanese because they have a Japanese parents, but never lived in Japan, never worked with a Japanese company, it's probably not a good fit. I have to make sure that it's someone who knows and who is able to lead between lines. And also, if you have a contact person in Japan, it's going to show that you're serious about it. You're serious about doing your business in Japan. You're serious about building a relationship with a Japanese company. So that's kind of good attitude to show to the corporates that you are trying to target. So having a contact point in Japan will be very helpful to have accelerate your communication with them. For sure, you have to select your representative very wisely. And one thing, some mistakes which is done by a lot of startups is to invest too much before they're sure about the market potential of Japan. They start creating the Japan branch, they start hiring local staff for biz dev, and then after 6 months, they realize that their product is not a fit at all for the Japanese customers. So that happens quite a lot. Many times regulations is different and your business is sometimes illegal in Japan. So make sure that you spend enough time to assess the market potential before you invest too much to open Japan branch or hiring many people here. My suggestion is to try to arrange a POC with a Japanese company because it's going to allow you to understand the communication with Japanese corporate, how it's done. Have a name of a company you've worked with when you will start actually coming to Japan. So starting by a POC is a good idea, I think. Well, obviously, because of all those reasons, you shouldn't assume that it's going to be a quick deal. So make sure that you really want to come here. Do the market assessments. Try to have an idea of how big the market potential could be here. And you are really looking for it, that you really want it. Because if you're not serious and if you're not tenacious, it's going to be very difficult to start your business here because they're very slow. A lot of communication will be quite complicated. You have to take time, and you can think to spend a year even more to get your first customer. Doing a POC, if it's free of charge, is why not that difficult. But if from the moment you start to ask them to pay, then the whole internal process in the Japanese company becomes much more complicated, and it's going to take a lot of time. So make sure that you're at least ready to spend a year without any income from the Japan side, but still you are really wishing to come here. And very important point, remember that patience is virtue, right? You have to be very patient. You have to be very careful. You have to be very clear about what you want to do. So be patient. It's going to take time. But again, it's a market which is very difficult to come. But once in, it's much easier to maintain. So a door difficult to open, but once inside, it's going to be very comfortable. It really worth to try for product and services that has a market potential. And my last do is that you should contact your trade commission in Japan. They're here to help you. They have this website, they have Twitter accounts, LinkedIn, Facebook. More importantly, they have this email address where you can contact anytime to ask for support or guidance, or they can introduce to some professionals based in Japan like myself or other great people. So don't hesitate to ask for help, ask for the service of the trade commissioner. So thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. ありがとうございました. Hope this video will help you. Bye.